When life seems unbearable, it is a fact that we have to be bringing either the future or the past into the present moment. And I say it's a fact, but there is one other scenario where life seems unbearable. And luckily for us, if it is truly unbearable, then the end is near. But everything else is bearable. And I think we have to develop a balancing act of bringing the future and the past into the present only in the degree in which we can handle it. And there also is times where even if you can handle it, you should not. You should just enjoy the present, where you are and what you're doing while you're doing it, because it is a fact that this too shall pass. And there's a very good chance that one day you'll look back on where you are right now and say that that was the good old days. But what I mean by we have to develop the balancing act is when life seems hard, when life seems unbearable, when things seem to be happening for the worst reason, when there seems to be no hope, when it seems that everything you've done has been wrong and you regret it all, you must confine yourself solely to the present moment, where nothing is unbearable, nothing is unending. It is just you in the present moment. And that is where you must go when life seems unbearable. If it seems unbearable, you are adding the future to the present or the past to the present and imagining that your future will be worse for the past that you have. As I said, the only time the present is unbearable is when its own end is coming. And if that's the case, then you have nothing to fear anyways. But the point of the video, when life seems unbearable, just confine yourself to the present. We like to catastrophize life. We like to say, this will happen because this, then that because of this, and then this because of that. And we snowball ourselves into a doubtful, uncertain future that we think is near absolute. And then this makes us despair. This makes us come out of the present moment, and this makes us wretched, miserable creatures. Now, I was reading some Schopenhauer last night, and he brought up a very good point with how, between animals and humans, and how animals are just, if you've ever read Schopenhauer, you know, he's like the saddest comedian ever. Like, for some reason, you just laugh while you read him, even though he talks about how life is miserable and there's no hope. It's weird. I don't know why, but I've heard other people say the same, and it's kind of true. You just there's a certain type of humor in his melancholy, and he was just talking about how animals have such a better existence than humans because they are solely confined to the present moment. They don't think of a future where, death is imminent. The only reason they escape death, if you will, is due to their instincts. But they don't really know what they're doing. They're just, the instinct to survive. It's not due to a fear of death, but to a primal instinct of survival that nature gives each and every creature. And Schopenhauer goes to say how humans are so miserable and wretched because we have such a hard time confining ourselves to the present moment. And I mean, I have no reason to disagree. I mean, I think every time anyone is miserable, wretched, they are catastrophizing. They are imagining a future that is not only uncertain, but usually doubtful. And they suffer before it is necessary, which leads to more suffering than necessary. And it makes no sense. And that's why we need to have the balancing act, because obviously foresight is a gift. It is good to be able to, have foresight. But when your foresight is causing you to be miserable in the present, to be depressed, to be wretched, to say, woe is me, then you have to understand that and cut yourself back and go back to a point where you can be happy. And what I mean by that is the least or the most amount of foresight you can have while still being in a good mood. And sometimes that'll be a decent bit of foresight, and you'll be able to deal with it nobly, honorably, and not be miserable. And then other times you'll literally have to confine yourself to this mere present moment, not imagine the pain. Like, say you're going through pain, or you're cold, or you're wet, or you're tired. It's in the act of saying, I can no longer bear this, you are actively bearing it. And you just have to confine yourself to one moment, just one moment at a time. I've told the story on here before about when I was hiking in Death Valley, and I was camping, and my bag was probably like 30 something pounds. And I wasn't in good hiking shape. And about 10 miles left to go on the hike, I thought I was at like 95% capacity, and I was just dead. And I put my head to the ground, and I just counted one, until I made it. And that is what I had to do in that moment. I wasn't able to imagine the next mile. I wasn't even able to imagine the view or where I was going. I could see where I was going because, in Death Valley, you were in the valley and I was going to a peak. So it was you could see it from miles away. So I couldn't even bring myself to bear looking at where I was going because it was incomprehensible how I would get there. It seemed so far away and my legs seemed so tired. But I didn't try to bite that whole hike off in one step when it became so much to bear. I just said, I can always go one more step. And one more step I went. And eventually, one step leads to another, and you're where you thought you could never end up. And my point is you just need to, in the moments of hard times, when life seems unbearable, you just need to confine yourself to the present moment and remind yourself that sometimes it's not what you're doing, but what you're not doing that matters. Sometimes you're walking the right path and you just need patience. You just need to keep enduring. You just need to keep the course, and eventually things will change. Change doesn't happen overnight. And you could have a day where you have, champion habits and noble actions. And the next day you're not going to be this savant of a sage who is never sad and always wise. It takes time and it takes patience and dedication day in and day out. So just confine yourself to the present when life is unbearable. And when life is bearable, allow your foresight to come in. Allow yourself to plan. Allow yourself to see the future events that may occur, to prepare yourself for them, because that is also a good practice. It is not solely negative to do negative visualization. It is good to know what could happen, because the unexpected blow lands heaviest. And it is good to be prepared so you don't have to get prepared, because if something happens and you're not prepared, it's too late to get prepared. You need to be prepared. But you need to know when to get prepared. You don't get prepared when life seems unbearable, when you're tired, you're, fill in the blank. You got to know thyself and know when it's a good time for you to say prepare, or to just say, you know what, the present moment is all I can bear. I cannot do my negative visualization. I cannot plan for the future. I cannot do anything but just endure this day. And there's nothing wrong with that, because as I brought up Schopenhauer also says how happy animals must be because they're solely confined to the present. And he gives the example of, domestic pets. Shows how, I think we all know, like, you come home to a dog and they're just solely in the present. The 8 hours you just left them alone is not in their head. The 8 hours that they'll be left alone tomorrow is not in their head. But the present moment that you are now here, about to give them love and affection, that is all they can find themselves to experience. And for that reason, they never suffer more than necessary, and they always enjoy everything to the fullest. And in their suffering or boredom or whatever you will, they don't catastrophize it. They don't say, oh, this is going to go on the rest of my life. They just take it 1 second at a time. And they don't realize, I'm assuming 8 hours has passed, or whatever length of time they were alone. They just accept it as merely one present after another, where no one is there. And then when someone is there, it is one present after another with somebody there. And obviously, as human beings, we need a little bit of foresight, and that is probably why we are at the top of the food chain, and all those other reasons that we are the type of species that we are. But in this day and age, we are high on Maslow's hierarchy, and food and water are not the typical human being's needs. They are their needs, but they are met easily. Even if you have to work, a job you don't like at a gas station, these needs are met and exceeded very easily. So we move higher, and now we focus on things like happiness and peace and tranquility. And it's only in the present. And I had this realization once that I don't think you can be unhappy in the present moment. And I know that'll probably not land well with a lot of you, but I truly believe that. And I think even in those moments where the present is hard, it's only so unbearable because we are imagining countless future present moments where we feel the same way we feel right now. But the fact that this too shall pass should tell you that you will not feel the same way in the future. You know, time, as they say, cures all wounds, and all urges fade away in time if you just don't act upon them. So I think the only time the present's unbearable is when we add the future, and we add thousands of hundreds of thousands of moments that feel just like this, even though that is never the case. Typically, it doesn't even take 1,000 present moments to get over the feelings that we feel are unbearable and unending. But I think I've hammered home the point enough for when life seems too hard to bear, what you must do. Good luck.